Welcome to Airway Focused Dentistry with Dr. Mark A. Cruz, the show where better breathing leads to better living. If your nights sound like a lawnmower chorus or your energy's stuck on low battery, you're in the right place. Hosted by Dr. Mark A. Cruz, we explore how the airway impacts your sleep, your health, and your smile, so you can breathe, sleep, and be well. Take a deep breath, and let's get started.
If you wake up tired and feel drained all day, your breathing might be the hidden culprit. Welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Schwenzer, your co host and producer in the studio with Dr. Mark A. Cruz. It's a pleasure again to chat with you, Dr. Cruz. Thank you.
Hi, Julie. How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm excited to learn more from you. So
Great.
let's get into it. How does poor breathing affect sleep quality and energy levels?
So think of breathing as the most critical moment to moment physiologic function. It's drawing in oxygen that drives metabolism. And for mammals that are warm blooded, we have a very high metabolic rate. We need a lot of energy for survival. And oxygen is the main driver of that metabolic function. And so we need to be able to do it very easily, very, very competently. And so when we fall asleep, if there is any flow limitation, like for instance, snoring is a classic example of flow limitation that the individual may have no awareness, the bed partner might, but the individual sleeping doesn't. That actually is more effortful breathing that stimulates a low grade stress response. And we actually measure that at night when we screen using high resolution pulse oximetry. And mostly what we're looking at is the heart rate while they're sleeping. And what we oftentimes find with individuals that don't necessarily even have obstructive sleep apnea. Um, More classically, what I call skinny woman syndrome, which is the young to middle-aged female, super common. They look like they're a vision of health, but they're suffering from a lot of symptoms that are related to sleep fragmentation. And when you look at the heart rate relative to the response in the oxygen saturation, what happens is their heart rate is spiking way above their daytime resting heart rate. So when we sleep, everything we should be resting, the heart rate should downregulate 15, 20 beats per minute less so that the body can recover. But what happens is they're arousing constantly so they don't get their full complement of what's called slow wave delta sleep and REM sleep, which is the deep, deep sleep. And so the brain's not able to really recover. So they wake up already unrefreshed and tired, and that first cup of coffee gets them up and running. But all day long, they're actually more in adrenal function that leads to adrenal fatigue and a lot of the symptoms. So there's a difference between sleepiness and fatigue. If you ask a young to middle aged, high functioning female in the middle of the day, if they could sit on an easy chair and fall asleep, they'd look at you like you're crazy. No way, they're all amped up. They don't know that they're amped up. That's because that's just what they're used to. That's the way the normal function, but they're not certainly feeling the way they would after their yoga session, which is the way they should always feel, which is what's called parasympathetic coherence. That's the way all mammals are designed to be 90% of the time in that rest and digest state that's super efficient for energy. But if you're burning up all your energy all night long and all day long, just to do the most basic functions, then there's less gas in the tank at the end of the day. And so that ends up being defined as fatigue. And that's something that you can um, measure with medical surveys that have been validated.
Yeah, and I mean, if you could expand on that too, how you mentioned the surveys. So how do you assess the breathing patterns in your practice? And they come in and they have this brain fog and fatigue, and they're telling you about these symptoms. How do you actually like study what their body's doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with an airway focused approach, we take a very data driven approach. So we have to have at least 3 to 5 data sets. So the data sets are the high resolution pulse oximetry. So I'll get 3 to 5, even maybe 6 nights of data because there could be some night to night variability. I want to know exactly what is going on. How we sleep during the week might be different than how we sleep on the weekend. So I want to see those differences, and there's a diary. So I kind of know what the factors are that are pertaining to the data that I look at. That's one set. The other is what we call CBCT. It's commuted uh, um, um, cone beam commuted tomography. So it's a 3 dimensional, very low radiation scan of the head and the airway. And the third is really the surveys, the validated surveys looking at 5 out of the 7 organ systems. So I'm asking questions regarding fatigue, regarding how they sleep, irritable bowel syndrome, anxiety, depression, things that are related. I'm looking at their orthodontic history, and then using a fatigue severity scale, which is a validated scale that looks at fatigue. And without getting into the details, I'm able to quantify what level of fatigue that individual has. And then the at least third critical step is the clinical photography. So I'm looking at intraoral and extraoral photography as a gallery to allow me to what we call phenotype. So I could look at the face, the structure and development of the airway, how they posture. All of those things are markers for how we breathe, like a head tilt. People have a stiff head. They're tilting to try to breathe. They don't know that because when they have their head where they should, it actually compresses the airway. It's kind of like sleep position. If you ask somebody how they sleep and they say, "I sleep on my stomach or my side," I said, "Well, can you sleep on your back?" Go, "Well, I don't." I go, "Do you know why?" "Well, I just am not comfortable there." They're not really understanding that the reason for that subconsciously is the flow limitation. It's just not comfortable. So as your head hits the pillow, gravity's working against you as you fall asleep, your tongue drops back, and it tells the brainstem, you're not breathing very well, so roll over onto your stomach or to your side where gravity's not working against the tongue. Then you could breathe better. You probably hyperextend the neck. We see this with toddlers, the little babies that are running around at 12 months of age. They're learning to walk, and then they fall asleep in what we call the tripod position. And grandma says, "Oh, how cute! You're in the stink bug position," not really realizing that kid is in trouble. They're hypoxic. Their head is hyperextended. You're just trying to breathe. So they're just doing what their physiology is telling them subconsciously. So we do that throughout of growth and development even as adults. So these are some of the things that we look at. And for part of what I do is really raising awareness with the individual to ask questions that otherwise have been either swept under the rug or have been told have another explanation, or it's just maybe take a chill pill or antidepressant. You have reflux, take the proton pump inhibitor. A little hypertension, go ahead and take this medication. So I'm about keeping people off of medications by really understanding the upstream why question, the upstream problem versus treating the downstream sign or symptom, if that makes sense.
And I have a question for you too. When I was pregnant, or women are pregnant, they're the suggestion is to sleep on your side.
Yes.
And why is that exactly? And how does
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So that's really, really good question. So some years ago, my group launched a fetal and maternal initiative to educate OBGYNs and moms about this. And now it's really gained a lot of steam because the evidence is out there that virtually every woman is in their third trimester has sleep disordered breathing in some form. And they're uncomfortable. And of course, it makes sense, right? If they've got this big hunk of flesh that's making their diaphragm have to work harder to draw air in. So you get as comfortable as you can, but the problem is well documented downstream consequences to the fetus. So you have elevated cortisol levels that have studies that have shown small for gestational age, increased chance for preeclampsia, increased chance for gestational diabetes. and other comorbidities that who would have known, right? And then you know um, give birth, and then you're back on track. So that's a huge problem that there are multi-center studies now believing that this may potentially be a very big public health problem, looking at this problem. So you got to sleep the way you're comfortable. The brain tells you how that is. But when you're pregnant, just understand you're kind of like that big, fat Pickwickian male with a 27-inch that's obese, that was classically the obstructive sleep apnea patient, but for different reasons. The diaphragm can't move, so that's called hypoventilation syndrome. And so, virtually every pregnant mom has that. It's not her fault; it's just part of the process. Now, there may be some pre-existing um, conditions that were not recognized, like upper resistance syndrome, what I called earlier skinny woman syndrome, that just put you at higher risk.
Okay, and a last question for you too is what are some lifestyle or treatment changes that we can do to help improve breathing and energy? And again, I know it's hard to say that for everybody because we're all different, but what do you suggest?
Well, first of all, being aware of the breath, um, really asking yourself, can you breathe easily, quietly, with very little resistance through the nose? Are your lips together? Ask yourself those questions. But it's a lot of it's lifestyle. So again, it depends on the age. So let's assume that you're an adult mom. Just exercising, obviously eating right and doing all those things are low hanging fruit recommendations, right? That we all know about, but really becoming more aware of our breathing function that we tend to take for granted. So if you have a deficient airway in any way, it will have a tendency to cause this physiologic stress that may present either as low grade anxiety or even panic attacks that people think is a psychological problem, like the traffic, the boss, the to dos, and they're overventilating. When actually it may be an upregulated physiologic function that doesn't have an area in the brain for language to communicate that. So it gets projected onto what's happening at the time. Is it the traffic? Is it the to-dos? Is it the boss? Is it the spouse? Is it the kids? That's just life. And so those are questions really more than anything, I would say, ask yourself those questions and see if it really, really makes sense. People often say, especially high functioning, driven individuals, that they're always ruminating, they're always thinking about the day, they can't wind down. Well, perhaps it's because they already have some low grade stress there that provides that environment for that ruminating. So these are all kind of some things that we could spend a lot of time talking about in addressing those lifestyle realities. So I hope that answers the question. Complex question, um, trying to answer it simply. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it did. And I really appreciate you answering that question. Thank you, Dr. Cruz.
You're very welcome.
Well, that was another powerful episode with you, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you the next time.
Great. Sounds good, Julie. Thank you. Have a great day.
That's today's breath of fresh insight from Airway Focused Dentistry with Dr. Mark A. Cruz. Remember, small changes in your airway can spark big changes in your life. Breathe, sleep, and be well. For more information, visit markacruzdds.com or call 949-661-1006. If this helped you, share the episode and maybe give your pillow a quieter night. See you next time.